Thank you for joining us today to talk about Father Primeau, our namesake, Mrs. Blackburn, Mrs. Maslett, and Mrs. Durand.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, maybe we can start with you, Mrs. Blackburn, since you were a Father Primeau recipient and you Father Primeau.
Drum and Bugle Band. It was one of the things that he started here in town. He was a big advocate for the fine arts and music and getting students and children involved in different things. And for some odd reason, he decided that we should have a drum and bugle band in town and go to parades all across Alberta and take part in all of those things, compete against the big bands, and we did. It was great fun. Jan, you were part of the drum and bugle band as well,
yes,
right?
I was the lead drummer. My mom and your mother-in-law sewed the outfits. He conscripted or voluntold everyone to come and help. And so it was a big thing. We had like about 55 members at some point. It was a big thing.
It was a big, and at that time Morinville was way smaller than it was today. We were maybe not even 1,000 people, so Morinville's about 10 times, right around 1,000. So it was kind of a big deal back then. He was a big visionary for our community. He liked to do things on a grand scale. So the band was just one thing that he did out of many. The project that he undertook was initiating the Frontier Days, kind of like the Morinville Festival that we have today.
The days we didn't have a town celebration, so he felt he'd started Fête du Village in Legal. And that was a big thing. We started going there. Then when he came here, he had to get the buildings. So we found out that he got them from Wainwright, and that he got buildings all in a circle. They were behind the arena, so that you had a fairground. We had, of course, the rides. He brought all that in, but in each of those little buildings, there was an organization in the town that ran something out of there, little games and things, and then they made the money for their organization. Like, CWL would do something, the Knights of Columbus, the Boy Scouts, and different things. And then they made meals, and everyone would bring in their specialty from their culture. We have German food, we have Irish food, we have French Canadian food. And that was why they called it the International Building. So they were great big vats of these. I remember helping to tortillas, meat pies, and my mother-in-law made pierogies, and we would, everyone came in to eat there. It was great.
As kids, we remember going, and it was a spectacular event. Like, it was really quite something that you looked forward to every June. That was a big, big project that took all ages to get off the ground. He was very good at getting people to do things.
So I've heard he would tap someone on the shoulder and say, "I need you for..."
They kind of the voluntold, like Jan just said, and people were happy to do it because he made it very, very easy to work with him, and he worked right alongside you. So he would set things up very well for you, so that it didn't feel like a huge chore, and you felt a lot of reward after when it was all done and the projects were finished. So he had a real innate ability to see the gifts in people and what they're good at. And so he'd say, "This is what I need you to do." And you kind of just did it. And that's how we got so many grand things to happen. We should mention is the fact that he had our church made a historical site. It was the very first church in Alberta to become a historical site. He had to renovate and restore all of the...
And because he had so many connections with the politicians, and he learned how to do this. And that was, like you're saying, it wasn't no task. If he thought it had to be done and would add to his parish, he would get it done. And so because he had a lot of connections with different politicians, he learned how to access the grants, and that enabled us to renovate. It was a huge job to renovate that church.
Oh, yeah.
Because it had to be back the way it was originally.
It had to be, it was one of the stipulations. It had to be back to the original state that it was built in.
The lights, and I remember them saying that the lights were in the storage. You had to go get it out of storage. This big chandelier or something, they had to kind of fix that. And all the bleachers and benches and everything.
And to get refinished.
The pulpits, everything. And then all the painting, all of that was done through artists right here.
She's talking about the walls, not the
walls
art on top.
No, not over the sacristy, but also the Stations of the Cross. And all of that was redone. It was a huge, huge undertaking. But like Mrs. Mousick said, he had an awful lot of connections, and he was able to talk with people and find people to do these things for him. he was very good at that. Actually, it did, and very fitting for him, because he was very much a mover and a shaker.
Saturday, and that's us teenagers.
Yeah.
When we knew there was a Oilers hockey game on, you'd be there at 7 and you were out like by 7:25 because he loved the Oilers. So yeah, that was.
That's great, and he was always very good about, he knew people didn't like really long homilies.
Yes.
So, say, I want you paying attention there, don't fall asleep, because I'm making it quick, short and sweet, but
Yes.
it's a good one.
Yeah, to the point.
Yeah.
He was always to the point. Very frank. He didn't have to mess around. He knew exactly what he was thinking, and he'd say it exactly how it is. Very, very down to earth, and a very approachable man, definitely.
Huge legacy to this town. Because he was a visionary. He wanted to think, how do I help this town, this parish of mine? And boy, did he take it seriously.
He did was not just to do it to get it done. It was everything was grand.
Yeah.
Like all of these parts, every part was huge, and
Had to paint all the buildings striped rainbow colors.
Oh yes, it was how everything was laid out, and but he had the whole town behind
Mhm.
him. Didn't matter if you were Catholic or Lutheran. It didn't matter your faith denomination. It was a community, definitely, and he pulled everybody in, and even made, there was mottos and
Oh, yeah, you said logos. You got made.
logos.
There
he
were,
had
yeah,
made
the nice
for it,
horseshoe.
and that everything. It was just huge and grand.
He had a printing press, I heard.
He did, in his spare time. That's what he liked to do. And of course, there was no computers back then.
And let's think,
And
to do a job well, he had to have communication, and he had to have it well advertised.
That's
So who's
right.
going to do it? Him.
Yep. Right down to the Sunday bulletins
Oh, yeah.
and the posters promoting everything that was going on. Now we use so much media and social media to get our messages across. Back then, it was the old paper and posters.
Yeah.
And so he had a full printing press in his basement, and would do everything to promote all of the stuff. He'd be astounded at what we can do now with computers.
He had a printing press, I heard.
He did, in his spare time. That's what he liked to do. And of course, there was no computers back then.
And let's think,
And
to do a job well, he had to have communication, and he had to have it well advertised.
That's
So who's
right.
going to do it? Him.
Yep. Right down to the Sunday bulletins
Oh, yeah.
and the posters promoting everything that was going on. Now we use so much media and social media to get our messages across. Back then, it was the old paper and posters.
Yeah.
And so he had a full printing press in his basement, and would do everything to promote all of the stuff. He'd be astounded at what we can do now with computers. He would just love that. Just be fascinated to see that. But that was his computer time.
We'd go down. He also had it at the bottom of the church before he put it in his
Yes.
house.
Yeah.
And so he'd have that green kind of little
Visor
visor
thing.
on it,
Yeah.
his sleeves pulled up with those black rubber things or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
ink on his fingers, smoke hanging out of his
Yep.
mouth, and he'd
Yeah,
come
oh,
up
yeah.
and, what do you need there? And we'd go help him with bed or stuff. So
Yeah.
it was, it's interesting to see that what an interesting priest. Mind you, we have to remember the town was small, so he was
Yes.
able to reach and network with people a lot easier than now when it's 10,000.
Yeah.
But boy, did he. But he could see all the parts of what makes something successful. That's how strong he was at seeing what I need to get done. The communication needs to be there, the workforces need to be there, the idea has to be there, and he would involve people to make it better and richer. Go back.
He felt most at home here, so he came back and ended up retiring. Meantime, they had, I think they voted, they put in different suggestions and so on, and then when he got selected, and it was that, and it truly is a nice legacy for him, because he was such a huge part of the community and did so much for us. And so it's kind of nice that his legacy lives on through the school and through the people here that go through Primeau.
Because it was a junior, senior.
Yeah, back then, back in 1981, way back when, gosh, I hate to say that out loud, we were the first, they had just built the school. The school at that time was out in the middle of a field. This was the field. There was nothing around except this big orange building. And we were the first graduating class. And it was a junior, senior high at that time.
So at that time, the Father Primeau Award must have been awarded to a grade 12 student.
That's right, yeah. So I was very fortunate to be the one that received the award. So I was quite honored that I was chosen for that. So it's kind of nice.
And it's cool that we kept this legacy on. When I was principal here for several years, we worked really hard to still develop that sense of leadership amongst the students. And Jeanette McMillan was my vice principal, and she knew Father Primeau very well. And so she really wanted to say, we can't let that go. Even if it's a junior high, we can still look for kids who are able to show that they're involved, that anyone can approach them and they're welcome. They're not mean to people. They're that same idea of how can we make things better? That's what's cool. And they actively work to do so within our school here. They did with me there. So I think that that's really great to foster that here. And we've had so many strong leaders come out of this school. Even from the junior high, you could tell these kids are going to be strong.